Panel. So dozens of House Republicans have already lined up behind Donald Trump, including 8 from Florida, including one just a few hours ago. I think Vern Buchanan, maybe it was. And 4 doing so this week on this big trip of DeSantis to meet with Capitol Hill Republicans. So what's going on?
We've said often that it's even with Trump indictment, even after January 6th, that there were multiple indications that Trump still had a grip on the party. But on the DeSantis side, what I think is interesting is things like this ongoing fight with Disney. You saw members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, also question whether or not that was going to be effective. It's almost like you have this collision of sort of leaning into these culture wars that we did see galvanize some of Trump's base, but that kind of running head on to sort of the traditional pro-business values as well of the Republican Party. But, you know, it's not just today. This week, we've seen that ongoing battle with DeSantis and Disney. You know, you've seen some Republican members of Congress that question whether or not that is effective as well.
Yeah, and Tiffany, DeSantis' team made this last-minute push to try to pick up some endorsements ahead of the trip to Capitol Hill. This is what a source close to a Republican House member told CNN about that, quote, "If the governor wants the endorsement, he should be picking up the phone and calling directly instead of having an aide doing the reach out. You know who calls for the Trump endorsement? Trump himself," unquote.
Well, look, you know what's going on here is politics.
Right.
And it seems very, very early in the presidential primaries to be, taking up the airwaves with this. What I found in my new project with Rescuing the American Dream is that voters are tired of politics. They want to hear solutions. Americans are suffering right now. Majority of them, 70% in our survey, agree that America is on the wrong track. And their top 3, number 1, government, big government and politics. No one's talking about solutions to help the American people. I want to give the microphone to the American people. I'm excited about the work we are doing. That's what should be dominating the airwaves right now.
You know, in the midterm election, an historically high percentage of people who said the country was on the wrong track, or said the economy was in bad shape, or said they disapproved of Joe Biden, still voted for Democrats anyway, because they viewed the alternative as unacceptable to a degree that we have never seen before. In exit polling. And that is kind of the challenge that Republicans are rolling toward in 2024. People are dissatisfied with things, the way things are going in the country. But there are a lot of voters who believe that putting Trump back in the White House is kind of an existential risk to American democracy. And the way DeSantis has chosen to try to beat him by trying to squeeze, you know, I have this image in my head of the Republican race being this big interstate highway. You have Trump rumbling down the right lane at 70 miles an hour.
In a huge Mack truck.
Right, in a Mack truck.
Yeah.
And then you've got like a center right lane, a center left lane that really isn't that crowded. And Ron DeSantis is trying to pass him on the right shoulder, like in the 6 inches before the guardrail. And it kind of raises the question. I think part of the problem he's having, you saw that donor in Florida, that Republican mega donor said, look, I was for Ron DeSantis because I thought he could win back the suburbs of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. If he's banning books, banning abortion, fighting with Disney, maybe he can't do that. So in some ways, the strategy that he's pursuing both creates the problem that Republicans had in 22 if he does win, and drains away some of the support he would need to actually get past Trump.
And Ashley, you know what's interesting about that is I've met Democrats, liberal Democrats in Florida who voted for DeSantis. I mean, he won re-election with almost 60% of the vote. And one of the reasons was people perceived him as a good governor. They liked what he did, you know, after storms. They liked, and the impression that the national audience is getting is somebody focused on these culture wars that the voters in Florida I had talked to, liberal Democrats, like I said, did not have.
Yeah, I mean, I think DeSantis had such a large margin of victory this past election cycle because of also his opponent. I would say that a lot of people didn't really favor Charlie Crist.
Yeah.
I still think, though, people in Florida did like the way DeSantis governed during COVID, keeping things open. But what DeSantis is also doing is playing to the base that still supports Trump with the book bans, with silently signing a 6-week abortion ban. These are all issues that play to an extreme right of the Republican Party. What Trump is trying to do, though, is he knows DeSantis is his stiffest competition, whether announced or not announced. And he's actually playing good politics. He's picking up the phone. We call it call time when you're organizing.
Right.
You're talking to people. You're saying a politician needs support and it needs voters. So you better talk to them and you better ask them for what you need. And DeSantis is saying, oh, maybe I don't need these Republican lawmakers, but at some point you're going to need to announce, and at some point you're going to have momentum, and he better hope it's not too late.
So Tiffany, you ran for Senate in Washington State, and you have this new group that you're starting. And one of the things you're doing is you're trying to get more outsiders. You're an outsider. You've never been elected to anything before. To run for office. Why is that important, do you think?
Well, I think it's important because life is a great teacher, and we need people who have unique life experiences in the halls of Congress. Career politicians aren't the future of our country. That's evidence in our polling. That's evidence, again, big government and politics. The American people are tired of hearing about it when they are suffering, when they're trying to put food on the table and gas in their car, when they're trying to ensure that their children have a good quality education. I'm a mom of 3 boys. I've seen our education slip in Washington State. So look, we need to ensure that we are giving the American people a voice. That's what's unique about my survey is it's not a top down. DC is so top down. We like to tell the American people what our ideas are and get their opinion. What we did in the survey is we asked them what their beliefs are, what their hopes and their fears are. And I think that's important going forward into this next cycle.
And one of the things that when I'm hearing about this, I always think that's what people say when they're surveyed, just like they want term limits. And then they ultimately go and they vote for the incumbent all the time,
Right. Now, and look, I mean, when it comes to some of the concerns among people, they're also going to be focused on what's causing them immediate stress, whether it be immediate economic stress, whether it be high prices as well. People are concerned about what's affecting them day to day. So, often when you hear sort of things being proposed that may be either long-term and effective or sort of sprawling ideas that people may not digest as improving their lives on a day-to-day basis, that's where some of that frustration can come into.
Thanks one and all for being here. Appreciate it. Still ahead.